welcome you to your first meeting with us, and congratulations on your confirmation. And here you are at your first appearance before the subcommittee. We value the opportunity to engage in an open and productive dialogue with you, and as we work together to strengthen the department's mission. We are here today to discuss the fiscal year 2026 budget. In the beginning of May, we received the skinny budget that outlined what the department's top priorities will be. While the overview was brief, I'm looking forward to hearing more details today. I like how these priorities will translate into improved outcomes for our veterans and more effective management across the department. I appreciate the continued investment in electronic healthcare record modernization with a $2.2 billion request. And while I strongly support this effort, I must acknowledge that the implementation so far has been challenging, to say the least, over budget and behind schedule. We owe it to our veterans and to the taxpayers to deliver a system successfully, and we hope we can share how the department plans to support the rapid expansion of the effort. President Trump has surpassed his first 100 days and is working toward cutting federal spending to help address the national crisis across this country that is faced by the people. We understand the proposals are being discussed that involve cuts to contracts and personnel. While we support the need to eliminate inefficiencies, it is critical that such efforts are executed thoughtfully and without compromising the care and services our veterans rely on. I'm sure these proposals will be a large part of today's conversation. Above all, this subcommittee has and will always remain committed to ensuring veterans receive the benefits and health care they earned. We will always meet our commitment to them. Unfortunately, I know that some of our friends on the other side of the aisle have recently used rhetoric and fear-mongering tactics to claim that we aren't fully funding veterans. But that is not true, and created unnecessary confusion and chaos for our veterans. We cannot continue to play politics with veterans' benefits and health care. In this recent video release, you simply stated things need to change. We are here today to let you know we agree that with a wish to discuss how we are working to transform the Department of Veterans Affairs, hopefully for the better. Things we need to change prior to the last administration's exit. The department notified Congress of a proposed $15 billion shortfall, which we now confirm was a gross overestimation, and there are numerous missteps in how benefits and medical budgets are forecast. These budget fluctuations and inaccuracies from the prior administration have shaken Congress's confidence in VA's ability to forecast its resource needs. I know it will be a heavy lift to address this in a quick manner, but we look forward to working with you on this and everything else. And now I'd like to recognize Ms. Wasserman Schultz for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you yielding, and welcome, Secretary Collins. It's nice to see you again. I appreciated our meeting last month and look forward to working together again going forward. We're here today to discuss what very little we know about the fiscal year 2026 budget request for the Department of Veterans Affairs. On May 2nd, the administration sent Congress its, quote, skinny budget, a 46-page document with highlights and summaries of what we might expect from the full budget request. But this 46-page skinny budget document included just 4 lines for VA, and this half a page of information is all we have on the 2026 VA budget request. That's hardly enough information to have a fruitful discussion about the budget request before us today. But what we do have is 4 months of very troubling actions at VA since the start of this administration. From my view and from the perspective of many veterans that I regularly talk to and that my colleagues talk to all across the country, it has been 4 months of chaos and repeated decisions that jeopardize fair, reliable, quality care to our veterans. I understand that a presidential transition is difficult, but this changeover is just not normal. In particular, it has challenged in the worst way possible the legitimacy of our institutions, including the role of Congress and the judiciary. The actions taken by this administration have led to fewer services available to our taxpayers, including veterans, services that they paid for and earned. This long trail of bedlam and destruction began with a mass freeze on grant programs across the government, which disturbingly did not spare America's veterans. The freeze would have eliminated food security support for our most impoverished veterans, cut community-based suicide prevention resources, stopped the construction of state home facilities, and much more. Then, within a matter of days, this freeze was lifted, causing unnecessary delays in payments to grant recipients and temporarily halting vital services for our veterans. The chaos continued in a first round of firings that indiscriminately targeted probationary employees. Then a leaked plan showed that up to 80,000 VA employees were also on the chopping block. Because the firings were clearly not well thought out, the courts forced VA to reinstate some employees, so they were rehired. Yet some were fired again, causing more disarray and unnecessary disruptions to services to our veterans. It was particularly troubling when it came to the Veterans Crisis Line. When Crisis Line employees were fired, Mr. Chairman, the Secretary publicly denounced these claims by putting out a YouTube video in which he said, and I quote, we did not hear me clearly, lay off any veteran crisis line responder. However, in a letter to Senator Baldwin, the Secretary admitted that he did indeed fire 24 employees at the Veteran Crisis Line. There were several days when calls were not answered because there simply wasn't anyone to do it. And I heard that directly from a veteran who trains the frontline staff who answers these calls after she was let go. Because, of course, why would we want to have properly trained staff on the crisis line? We will never know how many veterans called into that line during those days and didn't get an answer because of the chaos of those early days of this administration. I shudder to think of whose calls went unanswered over that time. The Secretary then forced his employees to quickly return to the office, where many returned to find out there just weren't enough desks. He also declared that his employees were in, quote, national security positions so that he could take away their collective bargaining rights. Yet somehow that security status didn't protect them from being fired. He claimed as one of his accomplishments that within the first 100 days, he opened 6 new clinics, but were all woefully understaffed. He promised to expand health care to our veterans, yet fired staff who ensure that women and minority veterans receive the unique and specialized care that they deserve. He gave veterans short notice that he was canceling the VA Servicing Purchase Program, which helps veterans who face foreclosure keep their homes. Yet stunningly, there was no real backup plan to address this issue. He canceled contracts, claiming they're duplicative and wasteful. But when we repeatedly asked for details, he did not provide them to explain how that was the case. First, it was 875 contracts. Then it was 585 contracts that we were told, all wrapped in claims of billions in savings. Yet no proof, documentation, or information has been provided to this committee or to the veterans who are losing these services that any of those claims were true. This shoot-from-the-hip management approach just doesn't work for the veterans that we serve. They deserve far better than what so far looks like a shock doctrine of cruelty, chaos, and indiscriminate cuts. Meanwhile, the real challenges the department faces remain in place. Veteran suicides continue. Staff shortages, especially among physicians, remain unaddressed. Homelessness is still too pervasive among our veterans. Veterans still struggle to transition to civilian life. And I know that the Secretary will say today that the cuts he's making to VA's budget will go directly into care for veterans. He's told me that himself. But we have yet to see any plan to corroborate that talking point. Where's the proof? It's been over 100 days and we've yet to see even the concept of a plan to address these real issues facing our veterans. Instead, all we see are political stunts that pander to Elon Musk and the most extreme in the party on the other side of the aisle. Banning the pride flag, ending care for transgender veterans, firing probationary employees, many of which are veterans themselves, banning anything that approaches addressing the needs of diverse veteran populations, and canceling contracts, it all does absolutely nothing to address the real challenges facing our veterans. Today, I look forward to getting specific answers to the questions we've been asking for months, and I look forward to the Secretary's testimony. Mr. Chairman, thank you. I yield back.
Okay, now we turn to Secretary Collins. Without objection, your entire written testimony will be included in the record. I will now recognize you for an opening statement, and then we will proceed with questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member. It's always good to see you. And it's good to be here to clear up a lot of misconceptions, a lot of things that have been said. In fact, frankly, Mr. Chairman and Madam Ranking Member, that's all I've done for 100 days, is I've fought rumor and innuendo in going through. In fact, it's the thing that we do the most of, and a lot of which was just talked about here in some of your opening statement, but especially the Ranking Member's opening statement. I look forward to answering those questions as we go. Because, the one thing I have found in my 100 days, which is tomorrow, coming forward, is that we have, at the VA, have some of the best men and women in the country taking care of the most unique and special group of people, and that is the people who serve our country. Those who have served alongside of me and many of you are getting the care that they need. However, there's interesting that what I have found is the moment you begin to discuss the VA, and the moment you begin to go through it, and this subcommittee realize the VA is in need of reform. I've heard it from most of you. I've heard it from many while I was serving in this body. The VA is a place that needs reform and needs to be able to deliver timely care and getting to yes for veterans to the benefits that they have earned. And making sure money that Congress appropriates to the VA is not diverted to non-mission critical or even wasteful programs. You see, even last year, even going back just to last year, Congress, about the need for reform in VA simply many times just came across as a request for more money and more people. But I think what you're going to see today as we discuss this is that money and people are not the exact answers to all the things that hurt us. In fact, the Biden administration for the last 4 years didn't address the most serious issues laying before it, such as benefit backlogs and rising healthcare wait times. In fact, the numbers speak for themselves. The VA grew by 52,000 full-time equivalents from fiscal year 21 to 24. Did all those extra people help make veterans care better? No. In fact, the VA performance metrics got worse. Healthcare wait times went up, disability benefits backlog increased. And sometimes something has to change, and President Trump is committed to making sure those changes happen at the VA. Our goal is to create a department that works better for veterans, families, caregivers, and survivors. And I've never been shy about addressing tough issues head on, and I won't ignore the elephant in the room here today. As everyone is aware, we're conducting a thorough review of department structure and staffing across the enterprise. I've said countless times, the review is aimed at finding ways to improve care and benefits for veterans without cutting care and benefits for those veterans. Our goal is to increase productivity and efficiency and to eliminate waste and bureaucracy, improving healthcare delivery and benefits to our veterans. We're going to maintain VA essential jobs like doctors and nurses and claims processors while phasing out other non-mission critical ideas and consolidating areas in which we have, frankly, overlap and waste. Our goal is to ensure that employees where they're needed, is put them there and cut unnecessary overhead. Strategically reduce staff to ensure the VA's budget is mostly going directly to veterans, and will accomplish this without making cuts to health care or benefits to VA beneficiaries. Year after year, calls for the VA reform come from every corner. Lawmakers, media watchdogs, this body, Inspector General, even the Government Accountability Office, VSOs, and including veterans across the country. So guess what? This year, we're actually going to do it. This area is actually the time that we're actually going to take those calls and say, we're going to try and fix something. For 10 years, Mr. Chairman, as you well know, the GAO has said that the VA is on a high-risk list for issues of abuse, of issues of fraud, the issues of waste. These are the GAO's words, not mine. For patient care, for patient accountability. These are their words, not mine. 10 years this has been going on. And every year, we just continue to act as if it doesn't exist. And so when we look at this, my issue is how do we actually make sure that we have change that actually works? And when you make system-wide changes, yes, there's going to be some issues in how we do it and how we go about it. But I made a commitment on my first day that the VA was no longer about the organization. It was about a service organization that was there for the veteran themselves. Instead of it being about what we're doing internally, it's about how are we delivering the service that they're entitled to, and that we're commanded to give. So as we start this, there's going to be a lot of questions. You know, the VA is not a federal jobs program. It's a service organization that is designed to help our veterans. So in these first 100 days, we have done things that you've heard about. We've actually started looking at our structure, going with career employees, our consultants and others to say, how are we actually looking at our employee workforce and how we're spending money? We're doing that in a very concise way. We're looking at contracts, and we're going to talk about those, I'm sure, today. But we're also making sure that the Mission Act is something that is fulfilled. The Mission Act was passed by this body and for many years has been basically ignored, and especially the last few years. Disturbing evidence has came up as we began to look at why community care, which many of you hear about from your constituents all the time, of not being able to get to their community doctors or not being access to community care, is why is that happening? Well, a lot of it was because the VA itself was not encouraging it. In fact, was actually discouraging the community care aspect. In fact, I was just in Arizona with a veteran, a student, who actually told me, he said, the only concern I have, he said, Mr. Secretary, he said, I've been waiting for about 3 months or more on my appointment and I can't get one. And I asked him, I said, have you been offered any other alternatives such as community care? And this veteran looked at me and said, what is that? By the way, the medical center director was sitting right next to me and quickly perked up at that. This is the kind of things we face. This is something we can actually come together on. This is not something that necessarily needs to be a divisive issue, but there is ways that we can fix this. But after 10 years, I think the GAO has said it's time to get to work. So as we talk about this today, Mr. Chairman, I'm looking forward to answering these questions. I'm looking forward to talking about how we have come together to make already changes in our VA. There's places we'll agree and there's places we'll disagree. But I'm amazed at what I have found. I found some great folks, and I found some veterans that, again, deserve the best treatment. But I've also seen a system that unfortunately has been talked about reform for so long, but not gotten it. Now's the time to make the reform. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I'm going to start off. We're gonna stick strictly to the 5-minute rule. Last week, a bunch of people kind of got a long wait because we had a lot of conversation. This should be a much better hearing today. Just recently, the Department of the Office of Inspector General released its final report on VBA and VHA budget shortfalls from last year. Congress provided $3 billion in emergency funds for VBA to ensure benefits were delivered on time, but ultimately knew after the law's enactment that they would not need the funding for compensation and pensions. As for VHA, their request boiled down to $6 billion instead of the original amount of $12 billion, which we provided through TEF in the FY25 CR. After reviewing the OIG's report and recommendations, I hope that you are seriously examining the VA's forecast it needs how VA forecasts its needs, so this doesn't happen again. I know you are new in this role and do not have a full budget yet, but we need to make sure that you will do your due diligence in restoring VA's fiscal management. What will VA be doing differently to project its needs in the president's budget?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is one of the questions I think that really highlights really where we're at as a problem with the VA. When I came in, this was forced upon the Congress last year. And after frankly, after the bills were passed, you get this all of a sudden request that we're short. And as it come to pass, as you saw in the IG report and others, that most of those claims were just false. They were not. But they came out of a misallocation of budgeting and a misappropriation of how far in advance and what they're projecting the spends were going to be. A lot of that actually came out of, especially from the VHA side and some others, community care lowering where they did not anticipate higher numbers. Then also some of this came a little as their anticipation on PACT Act benefits were being met and as we were fulfilling the role of the PACT Act. Now, this is the previous administration. However, the problem was there seemed to be no checks and balances on how these numbers were being calculated because the projections going forward were not there. For us, what we're doing right now is I promised during my confirmation, and I'm promising here, is we're going to send numbers that we have checked. We're going to make sure that our projections are giving us enough room for growth and also the areas that we need to look at so that when you get the numbers from us, even if it's, and I've said this before, I'm not going to send someone up here to talk to you about numbers or give the impression that we're right where we need to be if we're not sure of the numbers ourselves. So those are the kind of things of checks and balances that we're reinstituting into our budgeting process so that you'll have accurate numbers.
We know that the PACT Act has increased claims due to its expanded eligibility. How many veterans do you anticipate will enroll in the VA health care and benefits within the next 10 years?
Over the next 10 years, I think when we look at where we're at right now, we've had 6 million, a little over 6,100,000 that have been completed their toxic exposure screening. 1,000,006 have actually had their PACT Act disability approved, and that leaves us with actually 985,000 new enrollees since the law came into effect. So that's about a 2-year number. If you look at that over time, we expect that number to probably go down as more and more people are screened. We've screened about 6 million so far. I know the law requires us to screen all 14 to 15 million veterans. Frankly, that was a stretch for any organization to do. By having 6 million of the screenings completed, we're well on our way, by the way, to 9 million is currently enrolled in VHA, so in our healthcare system. So we're getting closer and closer. So I think you'll see probably in this next coming year, if you go to the 985, we've had about 200,000 to 300,000 a year that have come in. That'll probably continue as we're looking at it for the next maybe couple of years and then begin to trail off over the next 10.
Thank you. Ms. Wasserman-Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Collins, you've made some bold claims about cutting staff and programs while redirecting so-called savings to medical care and other benefits for veterans. But so far, that's all been blanket assertion without any evidence or proof to this committee or to the veterans that you've made these claims to. First, you claimed that $14 million saved from canceling DEI programs would go towards medical care. But our committee has not seen any evidence of this. The committee did not receive a reprogramming request on this, and our follow-up questions remain unanswered. Second, you claimed that $1.8 billion saved from canceled contracts would go towards medical care. Again, no proof, no data, no evidence, no reprogramming request on this either, and once more, our follow-up questions went unanswered. Third, you claimed $98 million saved from firing the first round of probationary employees and redirecting those funds to support healthcare benefits. And once again, no evidence, no reprogramming request, or even notification of it, and our follow-up questions remain unanswered. And fourth, you claimed as one of your accomplishments in the first 99 days that you and I, quote, redirected hundreds of millions of dollars from non-mission critical efforts to healthcare benefits and services that directly support VA beneficiaries. Again, this is yet another claim made without any real evidence, notification, reprogramming request, or even answers to the many questions our committee has asked. My question to you directly is, have any of the funds I've referenced been moved to new accounts?
In taking, I've tried to keep up with your 4 questions. I'll start at the end. The reprogramming, especially of contracts that was announced and was sent to Congress on April 24th, was regarding the intent to transfer funds generated from our reform efforts. There's $343 million that went to support VA community care and to ensure veterans have health care choices promised under the Bipartisan Mission Act of 2018. That was sent, like I said, and notification was made on April 24th going forward.
If we can just address one at a time.
Go
So
ahead.
you're required to send us a reprogramming request, not a notification. You are required to seek our approval. You were a member of Congress, you're aware of that, and you have not done that. You still owe us answers on why you sent a notification instead of a reprogramming. You didn't send us a plan. We're asking you for a plan. A 2-page notification with 1 briefing does not give us any real information on what exactly you'll be doing with these funds.
Remember, we're happy to continue our conversation
No,
together.
I would like an answer.
We have sent everything we're supposed to send you. We sent
No,
notification
you
on
have
April
not.
24th.
Reclaiming my time.
That's fine.
You are required to send us a reprogramming. I will cite the sections of our Appropriations Act to ensure that you can be clear on that. I encourage you to look at sections 227, 229, 230, and 231, which provide very clear guidelines for when and how you need to involve this committee when you decide to move funding around. We have several provisions, all included there in our Annual Appropriations Act, that details our transfer and reprogramming requirements. It's the law. So what I want to know today is, can I get your commitment that you will work with this committee to request approval through reprogramming requests? If you've moved these funds, and are you confirming today that you've moved those funds?
We have moved that, as we sent to you on April, that we have done that. We gave the notice and following OMB guidance, and also qualifying as we go forward. That is our commitment, and that is what we're required to do
No,
under
you
the
are
law.
not.
INS v. Chadha says that we're following that, which is most administrations have
sorry,
followed.
you're following
The Chadha is said we will give you our approval. We will show you. We do not have to come through. We're giving you notice of what we're reprogramming.
Reclaiming my time, you do
I
have
mean,
to
we're
come for
disagreeing
our-
here. There's not a lot of.
Okay.
This is not a reprogramming
So,
issue.
so it is a reprogramming request. When
It is, and we gave you notice.
You can't, okay. The law that we
The
passed.
law is Chadha, which we do not have
Reclaiming my
to. This is not there.
Reclaiming my time, Mr. Secretary. The law under the Appropriations Act in sections 227, 229, 230, and 231 give you very clear guidelines. The law requires you to ask Congress's approval through a reprogramming request. This shouldn't be a difficult thing to get you to agree to. I'm just asking you to follow the law. So I'll ask you again, will you follow the law that is written out clearly in the Appropriations Act?
I'm reminding the ranking member of the law as well under Chadha and following OMB guidance that
No,
we
no.
have given you
When
what
we
you have
pass it,
requested.
reclaiming my time,
Okay.
we're going
We're just
to.
we're at impasse here. I mean, we'll be happy to work with you.
This isn't, I just want to
You and
make
I.
clear that the committee understands that the way this secretary and this administration has interacted with Congress on moving hundreds of millions of dollars from one account to the next is unprecedented. They are required under appropriations law to request through a reprogramming to move those funds. I have not, in all the time that I have been on this committee, and in every year I've been on this committee, I've been in a leadership role, experienced a secretary who has not submitted reprogramming requests and just seems to think that all they have to do is let us know. That is ridiculous, and we will continue, we'll pursue this vigorously, Mr. Secretary.
And
yield back
I
the
agree
balance.
with the lady.
Yeah.
We expect that is the way.
We'll continue to give you what we give to following our guidance.
The chairman and I
We
are
wanted
in
it done
agreement.
the way it said, she has just said. It's been done that way. I've been on this committee for 20 years. It's been done that way 20 years. We're not going to change it now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being with us this morning. One of the highest honors I have is representing Oklahoma's 5th District, which has over 40,000 veterans who reside in my community. We have one of the highest rates of veterans per capita. Around 8% of Oklahoma's population has served our nation's military. Nationwide, the rate is about 6%. I'm proud that veterans are moving to Oklahoma because it's a welcoming and a patriotic environment, along with a high quality of life and a low cost of living. Our local VA director, Wade Vlasich, has done a tremendous job at the Oklahoma City VA, and I hope that you'll get the chance to see the facility soon at firsthand, as well as some of the challenges that they're currently facing. Mr. Secretary, thank you for taking the time to speak with me this last week. During our conversation, you mentioned that under the previous administration, the VA was experiencing a tremendous amount of increases of backlogs and wait times. And in your opening statement, you talked a bit about this, that even though the full-time equivalents had increased, there were still significant backlogs and wait times. Could you elaborate a little more on this and give me your perspective as how do we address the issue here?
Thank you, Congresswoman. I appreciate that because you've actually hit at the whole problem that we have here. And I think this is one of the issues that we can agree and disagree on issues of how it comes about. But there is no denying that after adding literally thousands upon tens of thousands of employees and hundreds of billions of dollars to the VA's budget, the metrics are not getting better. And I think that's a concern that should concern everybody, not just here at the VA, but also, and let me just be specific about that. As we look at these 52,000 employees, and this is in the last few years, wait times went from, on primary care, rose from 15.7 days to 24.3 days. Wait times for mental health rose from 14.7 to 20.4. Wait times for specialty care rose from 24 days to 38 days. And then here's the one that really was interesting. The VA disability backlogs claim increased in the last 4 years growing from 211,000 on January of 2021 to 264,000 on January 2025. When I took office in February, it was at 260. I can bring to you, Mr. Chairman and others, here's some good things to know, that as of this morning, it's at 200,000. We have dropped at almost 21% of the disability backlog in just under 100 days. That's something we can be proud of. And by the way, we didn't add any employees and we didn't add any more money to do that. We just got it done because this is the problem that we're seeing. So again, it's okay to have the understanding of differences of what we need to do. But when you're looking at the numbers, and by the way, there was a comment made about a week ago when I testified across the way that said these numbers were changed. Well, they were changed under Biden, the calculation of wait time. And so let's just understand here, the way they calculated the wait time, they made it from when actually the veteran themselves actually made the call instead of it being when the VA got to it. So what we're doing is it appeared that we were hiding the numbers so we could wait and shorter the time frame. This is actually showing a more truthful aspect of when the veteran was asking for their care.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Additionally, we talked a little bit about your plans to restructure VA staffing. Can you talk a little bit about the plan? I know that there's been a request for specific information, but you are only 100 days into the new administration in your role, and it takes some time to restructure an agency that has such a large budget and a huge number of employees and contractors. So can you talk a little bit about what you're looking to do with restructuring of the VA and what that will look like for our veterans?
I would love to. This is something, and this one knows, and Chairman and all of you know, this is the largest non-defense department we have in the federal government. We have 465,000 employees at this point. 409 of those are found in our VHA, 34,000 in our VBA. In our cemeteries, which I'm very proud of our cemetery work, is 2,400. But here's a number for you. In our central office, we have 16,375. This has just grown exponentially. So what we're looking at, not only our career employees, we're taking outside help, looking for industry help, standards on how we look at this, and go forward in how we can actually utilize this to make sure that our workforce is right-sized to where we are. Now, we have over 28,000 physicians. We have 91,000 nurses. But I think most on this committee would realize that not all of those are practicing medicine. Yet we have shortages in our clinics, and whether it be in your state or Georgia, my home state, or others, we have a shortage of doctors and nurses, but yet some of them are being out in administrative. So we're looking at the ways that are touching healthcare directly and seeing if we can resize our workforce. One of the things, though, and if I could, Mr. Chairman, just quickly on this, we have a issue that we also look at consolidation. Did you realize that right now 200,000 of our employees get their payroll done through our centralized service, but yet they allowed almost 50 or 60 of our hospitals to maintain their own payroll system, which is hundreds of employees doing a separate example of how we can look at doing this.
Thank you for addressing the duplicative nature of what's happening with the VA, and with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Collins, thank you for being here today, for your commitment to our veterans. And while we may have served on opposite sides of the aisle as members of the Georgia delegation, we've always tried to find common ground in supporting our service members and our veterans. I look forward to continuing that spirit of collaboration in your role as VA Secretary. However, I was struck by your testimony with regard to what you perceived as a very, very awful backlog carried over from the last administration. But I wanted to ask you if you did not take into consideration that last year, veterans submitted 2.4 million claims, which is 39% more than in 2022. Veterans submitted 2.3 million intents to file, which is 65% more than in 2022. In FY23 alone, VBA completed more than 1.9 million disability compensation or pension claims, breaking the previous record by nearly 16%. In calendar year 2023, more than 361,000 veterans were newly enrolled in the VA healthcare, which is an increase of more than 73,000 from FY22. And the special enrollment period for combat veterans ended in September 23, and in that month alone, VA enrolled 48,763 veterans compared to 26,000 the year before. So it would appear to me that the VA was successful in encouraging eligible veterans to apply, and that they did so, and they apparently were addressing those numbers very, very effectively. While we never can say that it's good enough, and we certainly want to see efficiencies and want to see the best use of taxpayer dollars, it would appear to me that there's a lot of talk about what the previous administration didn't do, but the proof is in the numbers, as you say, and apparently those numbers have not been carefully reviewed. I wanted to go to some of your testimony. You mentioned in your testimony that DEI initiatives had been phased out. What I'd like for you to tell me is which specific DEI initiatives and what are those that were phased out, and specifically which line items did they go to, and how much savings did that accrue? Can you identify for me 1, 2, 3, 4 DEI initiatives which were identified that you were referencing?
Yeah, the original DEI references was to the group that was put together to promote DEI across the
What
department.
is DEI? What do you mean?
Diversity, equity, inclusion. This is what we put aside that and said we're going to put back an emphasis on making all veterans inclusive.
So what I'm trying to understand is which program can you identify?
The Office of DEI, the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, it was found inside the VA.
So you're saying that the VA should not be concerned about reaching the diverse populations of veterans that served our country?
Well, unfortunately, Congressman, you and I have worked together a long time. That's not what always happens, and that it was more for diversity of workforce, not diversity of reaching out, not diversity of reaching out to veterans in your area as well.
For a long time, we were concerned about making sure that our female veterans got adequate treatment, that they were not harassed, and they were able to get specific treatment that was gender specific for them.
Yep.
And of course, we placed emphasis on that. Did you?
I'm so glad you brought that up because nothing has been affected to anything of our female veteran outreach or anything else. None of that was affected. Neither minority outreach as well.
So diversity
we're in agreement
does not
there.
include females?
We're in agreement with that. We're in agreement that we have not. That has not been cut.
Which specific program are you referring to?
In the aspect of inside and internal for DEI, looking internally to our workforces, which most of the DEI programs were, is to diversify work. We're looking for actual quality folks and looking at that.
I'm looking
to
for a
diversify.
program, though.
Our DEI office, I've answered the questions, Congressman.
Anything else?
We've also touched on DEI contracts. We also had the Office of Budget Equity, the VA DEI Council. Those things were all taken out as well.
Okay, my time is about out. The crisis line is a critical lifeline for veterans in urgent need. And you're sure that 24 employees that were erroneously terminated have been reinstated. But I'm still concerned about the systems and the oversight that allowed that lapse to occur in the first place. When it comes to the well-being of the lives of our veterans, we can't afford mistakes of that magnitude, and I think the ranking member referred to that in her opening statement. What specific safeguards, review protocols, and accountability measures are being implemented to ensure that essential personnel and programs, especially those tied to life-saving services like the Veterans Crisis Line, are not subject to erroneous cuts and administrative oversights in the future, as that happened so precipitously?
Well, Congressman, I think the very fact that we put on those non-answering the phone VCL line back into work as quickly as we did actually shows that there was a plot in place that looked at things and said, okay, was this something that needed to be done? We did that. I take exception. I know it was in the ranking member's earlier testimony, and I had this same conversation with the Senate last week. By our own staffing admissions and our own staffing research when we did this, there was no one who was answering the phone that was fired. No one. That is just, I mean, no matter what has been said, that is from our own people. The ones that were laid off in the probationary were staff members or behind-the-scenes supervisors that were not answering the phones. I would not agree with the assertion that was made earlier that there was lines that were not going on, no matter who may have told the ranking member or anybody else. The staff, and we looked into this and put them back in order. That's how we actually take care of this. No one was put in jeopardy. No one was not answered the phone. Those continued 24/7, 365.
But the calls were not answered.
They were answered.
The 5-minute rule.
I yield back. My time has expired.
And by the way, it's good to see my Georgia friend as well.
I'm now going to recognize the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Cole, for his comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, the only reason I was not here at the beginning is we have two former members testifying before this different subcommittees. Lee Zeldin was downstairs, our new EPA administrator. But I just want to tell you, my friend, having served with you, how pleased I was when your appointment was made. I know your commitment to members of service. You served this country yourself with great distinction. You served here with great distinction. And I think we're very also we're our colleagues here in the House because you guys know how this place works. And that is an enormous advantage. And frankly, we know you personally and professionally in a way we don't, some of your other colleagues in the cabinet. So I couldn't be more pleased to have you in this spot, and I look forward to working with you. As I believe my colleague, Ms. Wasserman-Schultz, mentioned a couple weeks ago, your team sent the House and Senate committees on appropriation a transfer notification indicating the department's transferring unobligated funds from various accounts over to medical community care. It's my understanding this should have come in the form of a reprogramming request. Obviously, we have authority there, and the chairman has authority there, so we just point that out for future reference. I know you've got, as I said in my impromptu remarks, the care of our veterans at heart, and I know that's going to be your main focus. Specifically, I understand the importance of making sure the community care account has the resources it needs, as we've had recent issues with this program at the Oklahoma City VA Medical Center. I look forward to working with you and your team in a more collaborative way and strengthening the relationship with the committee so this confusion does not happen again and we ensure working together that funding's properly allocated. Just a couple of quick questions. Can you provide me with, and the committee, with an update on the status of the execution of these funds?
If you're talking about the notice that we had sent up,
Yeah.
they were sent on the 24th. As you well know, the transfer takes place 30 days later, and that is on May 24th of this year.
Okay. And the April 24th letter indicated that no veteran services would be impacted by these transfers. That's good to hear. But can you provide a little information on the contracts and personnel cost savings generated by the action?
And those mainly come from contracts. I'll have more, as I promised earlier, we'll continue, Mr. Chairman, to work with you on this request and make sure that both, or you get the information you need, and we'll make sure that we can follow that with OMB as well.
I appreciate that. I'm going to make one other impromptu comment, and it's really not directed at you, so don't take it that way. I'm doing this at all of our hearings. We've got some guidance from the administration through the skinny budget, but we obviously don't have the full presidential budget yet. And that, by law, is supposed to be here February 15th. No new president ever makes that date. And it has no penalty attached to it. And frankly, I was very understanding when the Biden administration took a little while to get it here as well. So, again, you don't even have your people in place by February 15th. So it's an unreasonable timeline, particularly for a new administration. And frankly, most administrations have trouble doing it throughout their tenure. But I will say this, we are getting to the point, and I've had this discussion, and again, it's been a professional, good discussion with OMB, because we know you have budgetary people that you've got to deal with too. But we've got to have that information if we're to have any hope of getting these bills out on time. It would be my goal to try and get the budgets out of the committee by the August break. And honestly, if we have any chance of making it by September 30th and not subjecting you to a CR, we're going to have to be in a position to vote on some of these bills literally in June and July before the August break. Not all of them, but as many as we realistically can. So I would just ask you, as I've asked others, to urge our friends at OMB that, for you to get what you need out of this committee, we need more detail in the presidential budget. And I suspect you do too. So the sooner they can get that to us, the sooner we can get our job done and give you honestly the budget that you need and deserve with the care and the thought and hard collaborative work that it goes into creating that document. But last point, again, I'll end where I started. It is really good to have you there. I'm very pleased, and please call on me. And I know members on both sides of this committee, even when we have partisan differences, we don't differ over how important it is to care for people that put their lives on the line to defend the United States of America, that we've made commitments and promises to, and we intend in a bipartisan way to make sure those commitments and promises are kept. I know you share that same goal, and so I see the basis here of a very good and collaborative relationship in the months and the years ahead. So good to have you back, my friend.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. And I also, and we'll just let Mr. Zeldin know that you came to see your favorite second. How about that? Okay. As we go forward. No, but it is good. It's good to serve with you, and it's good, frankly, to have this moment just to see members that I have served with and served that and not. And it's good back and forth. I've learned a lot from your leadership over the time. We look forward to continuing that good collaborative relationship because it is going to be something, as you said, and something you and I have talked offline when we were serving together. This is the budget is something that, frankly, we've got to get on both sides, nonpartisan. This is both in any administration. This is something that we should get done. It has people understand that, or they don't understand it back home better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. I now recognize Mr. Franklin. Oh, down there, yeah. You're it.
I don't know if you're going to carry it to the other side, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And
My bad, Mr. Levin.
no problem, Mr. Chairman. Want to congratulate Mr. Secretary. It's great to be with you, and I want to associate myself with Chairman Cole's comments about the work that we do in a bipartisan manner for our veterans. I'm a new appropriator. I was on the Veterans Affairs Committee for 6 years prior to joining the Appropriations Committee, and I was both chair and ranking member of the Economic Opportunities Subcommittee. So I had an opportunity to work with lots of different great Republicans and Democrats alike, and we got scores of bills through and signed into law, both by President Trump and then by President Biden. And I'm hopeful we can continue in that spirit of bipartisan collaboration to find areas of common ground in the second Trump administration, just as we did with Secretary Wilkie in the first Trump administration. I think, like everybody else, we're excited to see the detailed budget request. And I wanted to just bring to your attention the bipartisan veterans package that we passed last year. Had a number of really important programs for veteran homelessness, long-term care, veteran caregivers. Included 3 of my bipartisan bills, and I have a parochial interest in making sure those are fully funded. One in particular, the CVSO Act, that's with Kathy McMorris Rogers, Brad Finstad, and Chris Pappas, which authorized $10 million in funding for grants to states to improve outreach to veterans and increase the number of county veteran service officers, very important for regions like mine in San Diego. So, Mr. Secretary, as you develop the final budget request, can you commit to working with your team to fully fund this important grant program?
Yes, and Congressman, I appreciate your words and comments. I can, because as most on this committee know, that was my hallmark here, is working bipartisanly to get stuff done, and we've done that before. Yes, I mean, you've also brought up something that's very important to me, and I've actually went to our county veterans, our state veterans. We've not done a good job, I think, at the VA over a long-term period of actually utilizing those state benefits, our state partnerships, and our county partnerships, because they're so important, because especially in the county side, this is where most people go because they know each other. It's that veteran knowing veteran. So for me, yes, this is something that's a priority for me going forward. It's going to be something we can definitely work across y'all. And Ms. McMorris Rogers and I did a lot of things together as well. So it's good to see y'all do that. But we will, yes.
That's great. I appreciate that very much. I also wanted to thank you. I wrote you back on April 2nd about call centers and specifically the potential move to automation. We receive, I mean, you were a member for a long time, you get all kinds of calls from disabled veterans, elderly veterans who don't know how to schedule appointments, they don't know how to navigate VA websites, they don't necessarily know how to reach out to their primary care providers in some cases, and they rely on those employees at your call centers, and they're worried that they won't be able to talk to an actual human being when they call VA to schedule an appointment. So, Mr. Secretary, can you promise my constituents that when they call VA, they will be able to talk to an actual human being?
Yeah, that's our intention. One of the things that I appreciate you asking this because it's important to me because as someone who deals a lot in my district, and most of you did as well with older veterans who are just looking for answers, especially trying to. What became surprising to me is we have it's approximately, and I have to get this number, over 200 and approximately 250 call centers associated with the VA. What concerns me about those is they don't talk to each other. Is we have 250 almost different call centers across the country that have no connection. Unlike if you were to call your insurance agent or another company, they would know, okay, we see, Congressman, you wanted to know about this benefit. Well, we could connect you there. What we're trying to do is make that more streamlined, or looking at the possibility of how do we do that so that the veteran can get directly to their care, get to somebody who can answer their question, but do it without having to dial several numbers. One of the problems we found is that they would dial one number, maybe our main 411 number, but yet at the end of the day, they're having to get another number to call. So I'm with you. Let's make it easy as we possibly can and streamline that so that they can get the personal help that they need.
But just to be clear, it'll be a human on the other end.
Yeah, we're making sure that we have as much human interaction as we can.
The other week, I had a dishwasher installed. I called the number, and it was an AI chat assistant. I was ready to hang up. I don't want that to happen to our veterans. And in the letter, in the response, you said, quote, VA call centers are incorporating self-service options, and, quote, there is always an option to be connected to a live representative. So again, to drill down on this, can you be specific about what self-service options are? Because in the private sector, these are lousy.
Time is used.
I'm sorry.
You've used your time.
Yes, sir. I have 15 seconds left, Mr. Chairman.
Can the
You can answer the
Secretary
question.
answer the question? Mr.
Yes, he may answer the
I'll answer the thing. Yeah, we're going to continue to work. I think the main thing, though, is there also has to be an understanding of how we also can process efficiently and looking at. So if there is ways that we can get them, if they could say push one to go right to VBA, we'll do that. That's my mind of how we can do this. Or if they can actually leave their information and they can get the information that they need sent in or set an appointment. Those are the kind of things that do work in the private sector as well. But we'll continue to work
Thank you,
together.
Mr. Secretary.
Thank you.
I, by the way, will join him, and I don't want them not talking to a human being. That's one of my pet peeves in life in this modern times.
I third that.
I think, can we all just get a hand vote? Yes, we're going to work that to do.
Mr. Franklin,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary, for joining us this morning. And I'm very grateful for your generosity and the time you've shared in meeting with us. You've got a monumental task ahead of you in reforming the largest government agency beyond the DOD. So I really appreciated your comments about personnel and money, and that necessarily more isn't better. Unfortunately, and I get it, I understand where it comes from, but too often my colleagues on the other side of the aisle think that more money is a solution to every problem. And it clearly isn't. But I would tell you that as a veteran and one who's charged with representing the veteran interest of my constituents and those across the country, all I care about is the right solution. We want to spend every dollar necessary to make good on our promises, nothing more. We want as many people as it takes, but no more than that. The job of the VA is not to employ as many people as it can. It should only employ what's necessary to deliver for the veterans. But on that, a couple things I want to dive into. I know you're looking at a lot of these, but just to make sure that they're on your radar screen. Research funding. For example, some inefficiencies we've seen in the clinical trial processes. Medical and prosthetic research. Great topic, great idea. Who would not want to spend as much money as is necessary to do the job there? We're spending northwards of $900 million a year. I think some across the aisle would say, great, let's spend $1.25 billion. That would make it better. Unfortunately, from some of the studies I've seen, you may have seen some of these, as much as $550 million of that is wasted each year, not go into its design purpose. And the goal there is to achieve the end in mind. We see excessive spending on recruitment and third-party vendors. In many cases, we're spending $20,000 to $30,000 to recruit a veteran into a program whereas comparable studies like that, clinical trials on the private side, may be $1,500 to $2,500 a patient. That's a waste. We see a lot of chronic under-enrollment in programs. There's, you always hear the highline ones that are most egregious, but somewhere there's only a handful of participants in studies. These things are on autopilot. They go year after year after year. And the people that are receiving money have no incentive to fix the system. They're getting their money. They go on about their way. Or is that something you're looking at, and how can we reform this?
Yes, we are. And just to go off, so there's been some concern about this, and let me just very clarify, because we're trying to get a good handle on what we're doing and how we're going about this. There's been no research trials have been canceled, period. That's just, it's not happened. But we are looking at how many we have going, because you sort of mixed two issues here. You got research that is going on in other areas, and then clinical trials, which are a little bit different. I appreciate you bringing them both up, because they need to be talked about. One of the things that concerned me as we started looking into this, and is one of the reasons why I put a pause on our research in particular from digging into this, because we're trying to make sure we do it right. They all end at different times, different contracts coming up, is we wanted to get a good handle to make sure what was working and what wasn't working. I know this may come as a surprise to some, but we had no, especially on the clinical trial side, let me go over to that side for a second, we had no good way of managing it. In fact, we have no centralized management of our clinical trials. And right now, I believe there's about 1,500 clinical trials going on.
That
And
are on
remember,
autopilot.
which is a lot. But also, I think taking into account here that clinical trials are not separating from healthcare. There's been some concern in some reports and others that veterans were being denied healthcare, and there was either because they were confusing clinical trials, which are extra and above the healthcare normal. So we're trying to get a handle on what we do have, what's working, what's effective, and how we make sure of that. Our research side is going to continue, because we've had some of the VA is one of the world's leader, especially in prosthetics and other issues, polytrauma, those kind of things, and we're going to continue that emphasis as well.
Okay. On the personnel side, last Congress I had the privilege to serve on the VA Authorizing Committee. We had whistleblowers coming to us complaining of sexual harassment. As we started digging into this, we were uncovering more and more where when whistleblowers would come forward, an investigation would start, rather than get to the bottom of them and get justice for those victims, people were being either allowed to retire or transfer, and then the investigations would be shut down. And in many cases, these people would leave the VA and then only to go to another government job in another agency. I've got a bill, a bipartisan bill, to try to address that. We're going to go forward with it. But from where you are you going to, can you give us a commitment that when people do come forward and they're courageous enough, that we're going to root out the evil doers and get rid of them?
Yes, that's one of my primary concerns right now, because there has been a culture, unfortunately, in many agencies, but also at the VA, and it's what I call fail up.
Right.
And that is, they failed at a certain job, and I have an example of this in just very specific, close to home, in which a senior leader failed and was documented failing, and the answer is to put them into the VISN level in a sort of advisory role. When I found that out, I said, no, that's not what we're going to do, and we started the proper procedures, given all that needs to be, to put this person on administrative leave. They're not going to be a part of what's happening. I think this is the one thing that has been frustrating to all of members of Congress on both sides, when we see egregious acts that we cannot take care of without going through a process that ends up many times not getting the intended result. But I will just make this commitment to everyone on both sides of this aisle. If you hurt a veteran and you're working for the VA, you will not work for the VA. That is my commitment, and I will take. There's a higher cost to keeping bad people in than there is ever a higher cost in getting rid of them.
Right. Thank you, Secretary. And I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, and Mr. Secretary, congratulations. It's always good seeing one of our former colleagues, so I wish you the best, and certainly want to work with you in any way that we can improve services to our veterans. I want to talk about efficiency, competition, performance, and contract management requirements. They're under the law already. Back in 2010, Congress passed the Government Performance and Results Modernization Act, and it calls for several things. There's also the other section dealing with contracts about the penalties, where you can suspend or debar somebody or put penalties, monetary penalties. So everything's under the law. And I'm hoping that Congress, since everybody's been talking about efficiency, effectiveness, and accountability, that I'm hoping that Congress can look at some of those provisions and enforce those provisions that are under the law. First one there's 4 categories: performance and regulatory efficiency reviews. The law already calls that, you ought to be looking at annual reviews of major construction, et cetera, modernization programs. It's under the law right now. Congress needs to provide that oversight. Same thing with looking at certain rules or regulations or directives that might be duplicative or inefficient. We ought to be looking at that. The law already calls for that, but Congress needs to do its job. Second category is contracting and construction procurement. And it's basically having competition and not just giving it to somebody. But the main thing is looking at on time and on budget. Name me one contract that, and some of us have been doing appropriations for years. Give me one agency, and certainly, I sit on the fence and our members see this. Everything's not on budget and it's not on time, but we don't enforce the penalties that the law calls for. So that's the second part. The third one is quarterly oversight reporting. The law already calls for status of agency performance reviews and resulting reforms, et cetera. Without going into details, there's a lot more. And then finally, the development submission of updated performance measures or metrics. The law calls for that already, and I think y'all are doing that, but it's not provided to Congress. And the problem is, if we're going to do our legislative oversight, we have to be able to get that work. So I certainly want to work with you on getting some of those items, working with you. And finally, the last question, and this is a question. There's some reports that show that the VA does provide mistaken disability and pension payments, a large amount. And then, including whether this report is right, $1.4 billion. But then those overpayments, because administrative errors, then they go back to the veterans, and the veterans say, I don't have the money. Now, I got the money. I know, you paid. It was a mistake, should be paid. But if we can prevent those errors at the very beginning, I think that will prevent some hardship for some of the veterans later. And again, look forward to working with you. And I used to be Speaker Pro Temp, and I miss your humor on the floor. You have a great sense of humor, Mr. Secretary. Good seeing you again, and I wish you the best.
Thank you, Congressman. It's good to see you again as well. Let me hit the last one real quick, because I know there's a hearing yesterday or this week, I think it was, in House Veterans Committee about this overpayment issue. This is not a specific VA issue as well, because I've been in the military for years. I remember DOD, especially when we first kicked off in Iraq and Afghanistan. There was overpayments for uniforms and other things, and then we were actually, unfortunately, some of my younger enlisted troops were having almost their entire pay was docked because they had an overpayment and they couldn't pay it. So this is something that's concerning to us. We're going to fix as we go forward. Very quickly, everything you outlined in your first part of your question, we're actually trying to follow the law, looking at this as we go forward. Competition, duplicating. Let me just say, this shows you the duplication issue that we looked at in our contracts, and we've looked at almost 16,000 contracts. We actually had a contract. The contract was to manage the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, which was already led by senior VA staff, and the contract was $5.8 million. We don't know what the staff was doing if we were contracting out the oversight. So this is the kind of thing we're looking at. But I do, and I'm glad the chairman and both our chairmen are here. I frankly, at some point in time, offline and just in our conversation, we need to talk about construction project at the VA. And it may be for everywhere. And this is, I think, something all of us, because we've all seen the problems with the build. There's no reason it should take $1.6 billion to build a hospital. There's no reason for this. But yet, here's the part. We budget a little bit, and then we'll budget the next year for another little bit. And for instance, I think it's like the St. Louis or Louisville, it takes 10 to 15 years to build a center. Every one of your hometowns, they can build a healthcare building or center in 24 months and be ready to go, and at a lot less cost. So I know we did this a few years ago when I was here, because we had the reaction to how it was going. I think it was in Colorado and some others. We brought in Corps of Engineers. We added these layers. I'm just telling you, Mr. Chairman, it's not working. I can't, it's hard for me to be able to come to this committee and say I have a major construction project, which we desperately need in some areas, that I can tell you will get done on time and on budget. I just can't do it. Thank you.
Mr. Alford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz, and congratulations to Mr. Secretary. Thank you for being here today. The Department of Veterans Affairs has profound responsibility to those who have served our great nation. Missouri's 4th Congressional District is home to thousands of veterans, yet my district, like many others, has heard too many stories of delayed care, bureaucratic obstacles, and a system that sometimes feels more like an adversary than an ally. In the golden age of America, I think the VA should be the gold standard of healthcare. And I think you have the same vision, Mr. Secretary. In our district, we pride ourselves on our constituent services, have a great team there. We try to provide concierge service. We look at people as clients, not just constituents. Our lead caseworker there, her name is Grace Townsend, and she's a veteran. And I have some questions that our staff wrote up here, but you know, I came up here to be a voice for my people, and I want to be a voice today for our chief caseworker, Grace Townsend. She texted me a couple of questions to ask you, because she deals with this. She deals with this on the front line every day, sir. I would love to know when he expects the backlog of disability claims to be worked up and caught up.
Well, Grace, and I'll speak to you and Congressman as well, thank you. One of the things is most on this know, 60% of your calls to your offices are constituent for cause of the VA.
Yep.
And I'm telling you up front, that's a failure on our part. I don't make any excuse for that. They should not have to call you to get the benefits they've earned. So to speak to Grace's, we've dropped that almost 21% from 260,000 to right at 200,000 in the last few months, and we're going to continue to see that go back down as we put resources and time to where it needs to go, and we're going to see that go. But also, one of the things that Grace would probably also ask about is we do the wrong metrics sometimes, and that's the end of completion. When do we actually finish it? And right now, we're way over the target of where we need to be. We're at about 135 days. So as we get the backlog down, that frees up more time to then get on to the other claims as we go.
Very good. VA prescriptions are mailed to veterans with the U.S. Postal Service delays. Is there a better way for veterans to get their medication?
There may be, and I think that's one of the things we're looking at in our overall projection of care and how we do that. I think this is something that the Congress has also looked at concerning basically how we deal with our generation of prescription, how we actually cut our costs. There's been some concern about the pharmacy benefit manager system. There's also been some concerns about how we go about that. It is something that's currently being looked at in our overall look at VHA.
Next question from Grace Townsend. There's been a decline in receiving responses to congressional inquiries in a timely manner. This kind of ties into the first question. Liaisons are not returning responses in reasonable timeframes. What used to be a 30-day turnaround time is now between 3 and 5 months. What do we do about it?
Well, I appreciate her bringing to that attention. Our staff is going to get with you afterwards, and I want to know what's happening. I want to know where she's sending the letters, and we're going to fix that. And that applies to anybody on this dais. If you're not getting timely response, I'm trying to right now rework our legislative affairs group that is up here on the Hill. It's something I promised in my confirmation here, and we're going to do that. So we'll be happy to work with it and see what the problem is, and we'll make changes where necessary.
With any potential cuts to employees, how many behavioral health providers could be cut?
None. I want more as I can get. I think remember, one of the things we've not talked about today is in any discussion we've had over 300,000 positions that we've exempted, and right now are currently hiring at the VA at any one time, and we need as much, and especially in the area of mental health, behavioral health, and others, to help us with our backlog, and with our, not just our backlog, but help us with our death by suicide issues, our homelessness issues, and getting back to work issues.
We have a minute left. Those are Grace's question. Mine is dealing with suicide. I lost my best friend to suicide 14 years ago. We continue to lose 6,400 veterans each year to suicide. How do we change that?
Congressman, I'm sorry for your loss. I have experienced a similar loss, but also been on the phone as my years of service in the Air Force of actually talking to those veterans on the line who have come to that point in life where they want to end their life. And that's a difficult place to be. And it's not something, and we look back on it and say, how can we help? And that's a very hard feeling for the families and others. Here's the sad reality of what we're looking at right now, why we're going to start a different approach in trying to get to as many people as we can. Since 2008, the number of suicides in this country by veterans have not really changed. 2008. We're still at that 6,500 to about 6,900. It's about 17, depending on how you want to look at the numbers. And yet, in the past few years, this body, and I appreciate the work, they spent $588 million on prevention for suicide, but yet our numbers aren't changing. We spent $2.3 billion on how do we actually take care of them, and that we do counseling for those that are struggling, but we're not changing. So I've instituted a new, we're looking at it completely different. I'm talking to our folks in the field, saying how can we reach more people? Because here's the disturbing fact for all of us on this dais, is that when they look at that 17 number, half of those veterans who take the option of death by suicide have never had a contact with the VA. Never had a contact with the VA. So that's why I'm going on podcasts. That's why we're going to any place we can. I'm going to interviews. I'm going everywhere I can to encourage our veterans, please, please, please reach out. And if that's with VA, great. But I'm also encouraging all of our veterans to have the resources to take care of their airmen, take care of their battle buddies, take care of their wingmen, because we can't afford to lose one.
We're over time, Mr. Secretary. You have a big job ahead of you, but you're going to do great. We're here for you. Thank you, sir. I yield back.
Ms. Escobar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Madam Ranking Member. Mr. Secretary, good to see you. This is a very different environment from our judiciary days.
And it is very good, and it's good to see you as well. And we've spent many an hour in rooms like this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It is. It's good to see you.
Thank you. I have, as you know, the incredible privilege of representing El Paso, Texas, home to over 50,000 veterans, home to Fort Bliss, a premier military installation, and an excellent active duty military population. And so I am very fortunate that I get to represent all of those folks in my hometown. I have been so alarmed by the DOGE attacks on the federal workforce. And as we know, 30% of our federal workforce is comprised of United States veterans. And when we talk about important issues like veteran suicide, behavioral health challenges, losing your job from one day to the next with no reason certainly exacerbates the stress that many of our veterans live through. So I wanted to make sure to put that clearly on the record, fighting for my community and our federal workforce comprised of a lot of veterans. Earlier, there was a dialogue about MILCON funding and the lack of guarantee that we're able to provide a community with delivering on-time procurement or construction. I have a prime example in my community, William Beaumont Army Medical Center, which was 3 years overdue, over, I think it was like $650 million over budget. That preceded me. But if we want to really tackle waste, fraud, abuse, that's a prime location. That's where we have to really look. Not firing the hardworking federal workforce, but actually looking at where we can make a real difference. And I am so excited about new construction that's happening, a new VA clinic that's right next door to William Beaumont, $700 million. I was proud to fight for that funding and proud to deliver it for El Paso and for our veterans. I am concerned about a repeat with what we saw with William Beaumont. There are lots of ideas that I'm going to be working with our ranking member and our chairman on in terms of reform, but I would like your commitment that you will work with my team and me on this issue, but in particular our VA clinic, and would like to know if you can commit to working with me on ideas like a dashboard to make construction transparent for the community and the veterans that they serve, making sure that the construction company that was awarded this incredible bid is accountable to our veterans in our community through town halls and meetings to provide that kind of level of transparency. But more importantly, or in addition, equally as importantly, the accountability when things don't go right. When I was sworn in 2019, visited the new facility, got a briefing about, I wanted to know why was it over budget? Why did it take so long? And after the briefing, my next question was, who was held accountable? No one. So would love to know your response and whether you would be open to working with me on this issue.
Congresswoman, have you been in my office for the last 100 days? You asked the same questions that I've asked. That's become, and my staff, I've almost at times felt like as I've reverted back in time to asking why all the time. Because everything comes across my desk, I ask why. Why are we doing it this way? Why is this up? And accountability starts with our office, but it also starts with personnel. And so we've asked why. But when it comes to construction projects, one of you have large headache days in a job like this. And one of mine was when we were discussing our minor and our major construction projects and began to look at projects, and they were just casually saying, well, we're gonna put 200 more, we need 200 more million here, and we're not finished. And I'm saying, well, when is the project going to be finished? And they said, well, that's not the way we do it, because we get a little money to start it, then another more to go from there. It's broken, Mr. Chairman. It's just broken. And I know that we want to put it in as being in the seat that you are in as well right now. You want to have that sort of accountability. You want to put layers in, but unfortunately, I think frankly, streamlining it may be the better part of what we need to do. And so we have a one-point accountability. We're looking at that internally to make sure that maybe there's a way that we can do our constructions a little bit more fine-tuned. We have accountability, but it's never enforced, seemingly to my satisfaction, on how we get these done. So what you've seen is normal, unfortunately, but it's not going to be normal in the next few years as we take a look at this, because it's not right for you to appropriate the money to get a new hospital, to get a new CBOC, which, by the way, CBOCs co-located with other locations is probably the way that we're going to see a lot of this go.
Do you commit to working with me
Yes.
on those items that I listed, those
Definitely.
ideas? Perfect.
Definitely.
And I'm out of time, but I do want to flag for you the decline in home health aid hours. Want to work with you on that as well.
Please get in touch with us, and we're happy to do that. Thank you.
I yield back.
Mr. Guest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your service, both your service in this body, but more importantly, your service in the United States Air Force. Want to highlight a couple of the successes that you've had within the first 100 days. You have redirected funds from non-mission critical areas to healthcare. You've ended remote work and brought employees back into the office. You've canceled duplicative and therefore wasteful contracts that the VA had entered into. And you've reduced disability backlogs by 21%. I think you said 60,000 cases have been resolved in just your 100 days, and that was the backlog of 60,000. And so want to thank you for those incredible efforts in those first 100 days. Also want to talk a little bit about the VA in general. As I understand, the VA has more than 478,000 employees. It is actually larger than our active duty United States Army. And we've seen incredible growth within the VA just in the last decade. In the last decade, as I understand, the VA has added roughly 114,000 employees, 114,000 within a decade, while the number of veterans that they serve has remained fairly constant at roughly $9.1 million. During that same time period, the budget of the VA during that 10-year window has grown from $160 billion to now $394 billion. So you would expect, or I would expect, that we have an agency that has substantially more money. They have substantially more employees. They are serving the same number of clientele, that we would have metrics that would show that the VA was doing an incredible job. But some of the metrics that you cited earlier in your testimony, and I think a metric which is very important to all individuals who are using the VA is wait times and claim backlogs. As it relates to wait times, over the last 4 years, so from FY21 to FY24, the wait times for primary care went up from 15.7 days to 24.3 days. The wait time for mental health care, and we heard earlier about suicide and the need to make sure that our veterans are receiving mental health care. The wait time for mental health care went up from 14.7 to 20.4. the wait time for specialty care went up from 24 days to 38 days. And the backlog for disability benefits went from 65,000 to 232,000 during that 4-year window. Again, during that window, we are continuing to add employees. We are continuing to add and increase the budget within the VA. But it would seem that our veterans are not getting the care that they need. And I'm a big believer in metrics. We can talk in generality about things, but hey, show me the numbers. And those were numbers that you provided to myself and others talking about the challenges that you face. And so I want to ask you, Doug, as you take over this role, and if you've been in the job for 100 days, and again, I think you've done some incredible work in the 100 days, what can we do? And let me address another rumor, and then I'll probably run out of time, so you probably won't have to say a word at all. But we have seen rumors, and we have seen news reports that of the 478,000 employees that you have under your control, that you're going to cut 80,000 of those employees, that those employees are going to be cut and it's going to dramatically impact veterans care. But in the first 100 days, if I understand correctly, there's only been 1,000 employees, and those employees were employees who were serving at the very beginning, so they were probationary employees that have let go. Some, I'm assuming, were let go for cause, which is only 0.5% of non-mission critical employees. And so I just want to put a lot of the false rumors to rest, that the allegations that have been made against you, against your leadership team, against the VA are not true, that what we saw in the last 4 years in the VA, we did not see care improve. We did not see our veterans reduce wait time. We saw those increase substantially. And you've got a difficult job ahead of you, Doug. And so I just want you to know that this committee wants to provide you the resources that you need, and we want you to be successful because our veterans deserve a VA that serves them. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I am out of time, and I yield back.
Ms. Wasserman Schultz and I decided we'll have a second round. And I'm going to start it off. And before I close, I'm aware of an ongoing issue to construction, construction for the community-based outpatient clinic in Bakersfield, California, which was authorized back in 2010. Wow. To the frustration of many, the construction of this VA clinic has been delayed due to 15 years of frivolous legislation. While the ability to protest is important to the procurement process, I think we can all agree that the current situation is unfair to the veterans living in Bakersfield and the surrounding communities, for that fact, who have patiently waited for years for their new and modernized clinic. Mr. Secretary, I know you are just getting caught up to speed on this issue, but I would appreciate any updates you have and to share with us on the status of the Bakersfield VA clinic, as well as your commitment to do everything within the VA's ability to bring a resolution to this situation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we have, it is something that's been brought to my attention by another member of the committee, not on this subcommittee, that was Constable Aldeo as well, has talked about this. And it goes to show that this is part of the problem that we're experiencing in contracting, especially in the construction side of it, because when it goes through, it's either held up by delays in, as you stated, in court appearances or other things. And so this one here is something that we're looking at. We may be, after looking at it, there may be a possibility of a solution here fairly soon. So we're going to look at that solution and may be able to get back with you on that fairly soon. So we'll hope to.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that, and I'll be looking forward to seeing that. And so will Mr. Valadeo. Ms. Wasserman Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before the clock begins, I just ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the provisions of Public Law 118-42. These are sections that clearly indicate that it is current law that unless the Secretary of Veterans Affairs receives approvals from the committees on appropriations of both houses of Congress, that these transfers are not to take place.
No objection.
Thank you. Okay. So, Mr. Secretary, in answer to Mr. Franklin's question about the cancer research and clinical trials concerns and the accusations that clinical trials in particular and research have been cut, those were referenced in a very disturbing article about indiscriminate staff firings and planned program cuts having a direct and negative impact on cancer treatment at the VA. You may recall that I'm a now 17-year breast cancer survivor, so this issue is deeply personal to me. These are leaked emails from VA staff that show that more than 1,000 veterans would lose access to treatment for diseases ranging from metastatic head and neck cancers and kidney disease to traumatic brain injuries. These emails further revealed that enrollment in clinical trials is stopping, which we all know means veterans lose access to therapies. And I'm talking about enrollment stopping. I've been working hard on this committee along with Judge Carter, and we've successfully increased funding for cancer research and clinical trials. So can you further clarify this? Have clinical trials enrollment stopped? Have there been any, I know you referenced reorganization, but in the process of looking at reorganizing, has enrollment in any clinical trial stopped, and has any research been halted?
Okay, let's take the two questions, and again, you and I have talked about this as well. No research, no VA research trials have been canceled, so let's take research that way. The clinical trials, and you made mention of one, so I'm assuming you're talking about Pittsburgh because that was the one that seems to have come up. This was one that was a head and neck cancer, lung cancer, that officials warned, this was the allegation that warned that hiring freezes had still not started. Here's the interesting thing about that. Hiring freeze had nothing to do with that because this was scheduled to start, was not started before the hiring freeze, had not been recruiting anybody. There was nobody in, so you can't stop something that hadn't started yet. This was a trial that had not started
Just to interject, was enrollment in that clinical trial or any clinical trial halted?
No, because you can't start, you can't
Well, was
halt
it
something that wasn't started.
halted or not begun as planned?
No, because this was already been planned. In fact, that particular trial that you're talking about right now, they're going to begin looking for participants in that trial this month.
Okay, well, there were dozens of emails. This is not rumor or innuendo. This is dozens of emails from VA employees in specific multiple locations from Pennsylvania to Detroit to Colorado, indicating clearly that there were research projects halted and enrollment stopped. So, and I know you were asked these questions by two senators from the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee over a week ago. So have you been able to get further information in relation to those questions and mine?
And that's what I just answered to sales as far
So
as
there's no clinical trial
No, the clinical
anywhere in the VA where enrollment has halted or research has stopped?
There is clinical trials that go on. This is one of our problems that we had, and I said earlier. There are over 1,500 clinical trials going on right now with no centralized supervision from
No, I know, and I heard your answer to Mr.
I'm trying to
Franklin.
yeah.
Has there been any clinical trial where enrollment has been halted anywhere in the VA or research that was being conducted or beginning to proceed that has been halted anywhere in the VA? And have you looked into that?
I think for any, and I'm not, here's my question, because you just made a very, and I'm not trying to avoid your question, but I just want to be honest, you made a very open-ended, could they have been slowed up or stopped for any reason?
Well,
There
that's
may
the
be
act,
there may be, and that I couldn't answer the question. I'll have to look at your specific, because you've now opened the aperture
Okay.
so wide.
No,
that
I'm opening,
it-
the
no,
aperture
but
was.
it's not a hiring freeze
Mr.
issue.
Secretary, reclaiming my time. The
problem.
aperture was opened pretty wide by this article where there were dozens of emails from doctors and healthcare providers involved in this research and these clinical trials that have specifically said that they were halted. And so, I mean, I'm
that's
not,
specific- yeah,
I'm not just
I
making this up. These were from VA employees. So it's
Okay.
an aperture that, so since the aperture is wide as it should be, I'd like to specifically know the answer Have you not looked into that concern in the week since the Senate VA
Yeah,
committee?
we have looked into it, and I think the specific question, especially that was the center of this article, again, was going back to especially as your concern as well, the head and neck cancer and lung cancer, was a program that was talked about, was not even started. So
I would like you
can't
to-
call it on a hiring freeze.
Okay, so
I think
I'd like,
we've got two different
I'd
things.
like you to get back to me then.
Okay, that's fine.
Specifically about have there, since your tenure begun, any halting of cancer research at the VA that was planned and any enrollment in clinical trials that have ceased
For any reason.
for
Would this
any
be-
reason
would this be-
and
would this be
for-
previous
and for
last year as
specific
well? The
reasons.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. I now give it to.
But I would like to just make sure that
Gentleman
the
from
secretary,
Florida,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Frank.
I would like the secretary to confirm that he will get me that information before you
Gentlewoman's
move on.
time has been expired.
So you're not going to allow,
The
Judge Carter would
gentlewoman's time
certainly
has
let me
expired.
make
I am
sure
not
with the
Judge Carter,
secretary.
madam. The gentlewoman's from Florida has expired. I now give the floor to the gentleman
That
from
is
Florida.
not how this committee is run, Mr. Chairman.
It is under me, ma'am.
Well, you're not the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Appreciate you staying for another round of questions. There were a couple more topics I did want to touch on. You mentioned community care in your opening testimony. In my district in Central Florida, in the northern part, we have the opportunity to avail ourselves to fantastic facilities in Tampa and St. Pete. I also have a brand-new clinic in Lakeland that is wonderful. I've been there a number of times, and they're doing great work. I also represent a lot of rural counties where it's very difficult for service members, for veterans, to get that care in a timely manner. We saw what seemed to be in the last administration some gaming on the part of VA with the appointment times and things like that to try to make it look like it was working better than it was, but really was just serving to frustrate veterans. I'd like to have you maybe expand a little more on the role you see for community care, and to the extent that there may be those within your organization who are trying to resist that, how do you root that out and get them on board?
Thank you, Congressman. I appreciate that. And because really, this one is probably the simplest one of all because it was overwhelmingly passed by this body years ago, and I was a part of it when the Mission Act was actually put forward, coming after the Choice Act, which was in response to wait time issues and scandals that we could not get our veterans in for timely care and timely access. So it should have been something that had been growing an alternative, for alternative ways for a veteran to get care that they need. They can get all the care they want through the VA, or they can get part of that care through the VA and part in the community. What we found concerning as we've went along here, is, especially in the previous 4 years, is there seems to be more of a concern, and I actually heard this from actual VA employees who said, we have to sell the VA. In other words, they wanted to keep all veterans internal and not send them to community care because there was concerns that if they did not do that, then they would actually, not get funding, or they would be cut or something of that nature. What we're looking at is we actually have seen emails and procurement slides or not procurement, but actually slides in which the VA itself was actively discouraging community care by overbooking, by not letting the veteran know that they would have an access to that. So those are the kind of things we're trying to root out right now. One other aspect, if you would allow me here on community care, is frankly, we have a two-part problem here. We have a problem with the VA, which I'm working to fix, and we have also then our third-party administrators that we're trying to work with who are our conduit through which our veterans go to community care, either for doctors, recruitment, scheduling, those kind of things, which we have found at times probably inadequate in some areas. But the other part is our side of it. And if we don't have things in place where the doctor can easily refer someone to community care by either taking too much control or asking for more information before they send them, then that slows down this process as well. One of the things we found out just recently as we look at our community care aspect is our doctors tend to think that they're supposed to be supervising, at least that's the thought process, they're supervising the community care doctors. In other words, is if there's a hierarchy of care here. And what we want them to do is, and I asked many of our doctors this, I said, why would you think you would have to supervise a fellow colleague as a doctor? And really they don't have an answer except that's just the way the VA has been doing it. So it slows up everything as you go along. Those are all areas that we're looking at. Another thing for us is how we do even direct care. We ask duplicative stuff all the time. An example given by a veteran just the other day who was a double amputee, asked the question, why do I have to go to my primary care to get a referral to an OT, to a referral to a PT, to get to a seating clinic, to get a new wheelchair? Sure. Those are the kind of things that we're facing.
Okay. One other topic, and I was thinking of it as Mr. Alford had brought up, veteran suicide. Clearly, no matter how we bend the curve, one suicide is too many. What has been kind of a sensitive topic in the past, a little controversial, is the use of psychedelics to treat PTSD. There are studies that show as many as 29% of the post 9/11 veterans are suffering from PTSD. We know the path that leads to. I personally have lost several of my former Navy buddies to suicide, and it's heartbreaking to see. And I'm for looking at anything that works, and I wouldn't have been in favor of that. But I can also tell you, I have fellow members of Congress who have told me that the use of psychedelics literally saved their lives. I would be interested to know your thoughts on that and how we can work with you on it.
Yes, this is I am probably the first secretary who've actually said I'm willing to look at the possibility for any of these treatments that can work. And again, we're not just running off saying this is the cure and the answer for everything with PTS or traumatic brain injury or anything else. But it does go back to the question, if there are actually treatments that we can show clinically, which, by the way, 11 trials are going on right now in conjunction with the VA on the use of psychedelics. We've seen some good results there, and also other treatments as well. So I'm looking at that as any way possible. Again, I don't want to say this is the only answer, because it's probably not, but is it a possible answer that we can provide for veterans? I'll be willing to look at that.
Well, I appreciate that, and anything that would bend that curve, and there's no honor in hooking veterans on narcotics either. So
Exactly.
I mean, so thank you, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Yeah, and I've committed to working, and if I didn't make that clear in the earlier answer, we'll commit to working with you on those and getting
Thank
those
you.
answers. Thank you.
Both, just to re-clarify what I was asking, because you said, for any and all reasons. Yes, for any and all reasons, but specifically related to the DOGE cuts and people who were fired and any terminations or personnel changes, but more broadly across the whole VA. Obviously, we're all interested in making sure that cancer research and clinical trials continues. So if you can get me information across the VA on whether planned clinical trials and research has been canceled.
We'll work it. And also, just as a clarification, the Colorado and Detroit were not trials in that was referenced in that article. They were not trials.
Okay.
And also, specific questions. If you got specifics, we'll work together in our office.
Thank you.
Also, this was one I can't emphasize this enough, and it's a personnel issue. We don't manage these trials from VACO. And so when you actually look at it from a perspective as I don't care who's sitting here as secretary, if you don't know how many trials are going on or even there's any coordination in them, that's a problem.
No disagreement.
And we'll talk about that, but I will answer that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your indulgence.
Ms. Escobar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I have to say, I so appreciate your collegial nature on this committee. When you stepped out for a moment, we got an example of the exact opposite, and it was a little shocking to me. So I want you to know I appreciate you and your leadership, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Collins, I have a question about the VA Servicing Purchase Program, or VASP, which has helped about 17,000 veterans avoid foreclosure after falling behind on their mortgages. And public reports indicate nearly 90,000 VA loans are seriously past due, with approximately 33,000 of those already in the foreclosure process. Can you tell me why was VASP terminated without first instituting an immediately available alternative option to provide foreclosure relief to our veterans?
Thank you, Congresswoman. This is an interesting part because this was a program that was not started from Congress, was not initiated from Congress. It was initiated inside VBA last year from funds that they redirected at that point. Interesting enough, I'm not sure they actually came to you for redirection on that from last year because it was obviously something not from this body. The problem it puts us in, and there's been vehement kickback from Congress, especially the chairman of the House Veterans Committee, that says, and basically it's indicating this is not something the VA should be in. We should not be buying or be in the mortgage loan business. In fact, what happened since last year, 17,000 at-risk mortgages were assumed at $5.4 billion assumption on the VA, not anywhere else, and there was nothing to go. There was estimates internal, if this program was continuing, estimates as high as $17 billion. We're taking property that we have no control over in the sense of how do we get rid of it, how do we manage it, or do anything else. And at the end of the day, it was not helping the situation of veterans who had gotten behind in their payments or other. These were not taking people who had no home and not giving them a chance at a home, which is our mortgage process. This was taking folks who may have, gotten in trouble not being able to pay their loan payments. They could resize, re-downsize, and still have access to any other VA benefit from our mortgage side of the house as well. So this was just a program when you have to go through the system, and it was up for renewal, which again, we were going to have to come to this body and ask for billions of dollars more because they were taking it from mandatory. This was not my program. This was started previously. It was just made the determination with the stuff that we've got going on in the VA, that there's other ways that we could help in this situation using other agencies and others. But for us to assume mortgages, it puts us in a very legally binding issue and also a liability issue going along on these properties if they sit vacant and things like that.
So have you thought through, you and your team, have you all thought through a plan for having some of those other agencies, as you mentioned, kind of take this over?
There's not necessarily taking it over. I think there's a discussion on what do we need to do to keep this from happening to start with, to keep the veteran out of the situations that they're in. That's a bigger conversation that could be had. I mean, and again, I want to make it very clear, this has nothing to do with homelessness. And unfortunately, there was a little bit of discussion that does this affect homelessness? This has nothing to do with that program. This has folks who actually purchased the mortgages. We're open to it. I know there's some legislation going through Congress, and especially in the Veterans Affairs Committee, on a partial claims kind of issue that would give some relief, but again, not put us on the hook for that much liability. Again, I don't underestimate the heart necessarily of what's trying to happen, but this was a sort of an out-of-the-blue kind of thing that VBA, who was having enough problems with everything else that they're doing, decided to start a program we shouldn't have.
And I get what you're saying, so I appreciate that. But I do want to dig in a little bit, so I'm going to ask, if you don't mind, if you can follow up with me, if you and your team can follow up with me. I'm interested in knowing how many veterans were waiting for VASP assistance, what specific guidance the VA shared with those veterans after VASP was terminated, and also the number of veterans who, to y'all's knowledge, entered foreclosure or serious mortgage delinquency spanning the date of VASP cancellation to the date of your response, if you wouldn't mind. And we'll get that to you in writing.
That'd be great. And can I just say one thing? Is a problem we had from what was, and again, these are rough numbers. We'll get you more. There's about 5,000 that had applied that had not got. Nobody was under the program was taken off the program. That's also something to understand. We did no more re-entrants after May 1st. And so there's nobody that was in the program that was kicked off the program. This was just saying we're not adding anymore.
Okay.
But I'll help you get the other information.
Perfect. And I'm just about out of time, so I'll have to get you my other questions in writing. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll use my 5 minutes wisely. First of all, thank you for stepping up and serving. We served together, and I appreciate you going back to the front line. A little discussion on the electronic health record modernization, and thank you for your efforts to go at 13 sites live. That hasn't happened in a while. But some of the reports suggest that some of the problems in the first run was the employees did not attend the mandatory training. Can you comment on your plan to make sure that your employees attend the training so they can operate the system efficiently?
Yes, Congressman. I think this is when going back to a whole restart here was a whole understanding that, frankly, when I first got there, we had two sides. You had the VA side, you had Oracle side, and basically they're just staring at each other, waiting for the other one to do nothing except for one thing: Oracle was getting paid, and so was everybody else, and we wasn't getting a system. So what we did on our side of the house was I said, we're going to come to the table, and we've already cut out duplicative committees. We already agreed to standardization, and there was also the implicit direction from myself to our group that is starting this, Dr. Evans and others, that we will do everything we're possible to make sure not only is attendance there, but also this issue of standardization. The first sites that went live, and these were the 6 out in Washington and Oregon, where everybody was sort of given, it would be like this committee, and I just said, okay, you do yours, you do yours, you do yours, and they wasn't properly functioning together. So what we're doing now is a standardization, just as you and I both in the military understand, here's the way we're going to do it. That'll make sure that we get better attendance, and also everything is not a one-off, if you would. So our integrators, the folks who are actually training our employees on this, don't have to say, well, which hospital am I in today to try and train something?
So if I understand you right, are you going to ensure compliance with employees to make sure they attend the training?
Yeah, this is not an option. This is not an option, show up, feel like you want to do. This isn't happy-go-lucky. This is you will get it done because our veterans need it.
Secondly, you released a schedule for the 13. Do you have any idea, pending that the next 13 go correct, of what a schedule would be through the next fiscal year?
As far as we got right now, going to the limited scope ahead, we're looking at probably the addition of 20 to 25 more is our goal or target. If we can do more, we will actually look at our budget, because this is coming to the contract side of this, what we can do. But there is a plan for momentum. That's the problem that we've been missing, Congressman, is there's been no momentum in this project. Once you get momentum, you can add more sites as we go.
And shifting to Tri-West, my office gets a lot of complaints about Tri-West. Lack of response, appeals. In one case, the Tri-West said the provider would have to fill out 259 separate appeals due to various instances of overpayment of Tri-West parts. If you would you spend some time and priority on Tri-West, because my office gets it all day long that you can't reach anyone on the phone, and then it takes a congressman's office to stimulate action on that. And I think it's unfair for families to have to contact their congressman as a part of that chain of command to get response from Tri-West. So it's a problem, and I would appreciate your priority on that.
Congressman, I look at it as mission fail. When they call your office to get help, it's mission fail. And so we've got to do better making from our end on how we actually help people to get in the system. But I also have to update this committee, which we did, we made it known earlier this year to the authorizing bodies as well. The contracts were supposed to go back out this year for both Optum and for Tri-West as our third-party administrators in this. That groundwork was supposed to have been started last fall, last year. It was not started. And so when we got time to get ready, and one of the first couple of weeks I was here, I was brought to the attention that we cannot let this contract, we can't let this RFI process go forward because the groundwork had not been laid. So we're now having to take an extra year and get that started. But what we've done from our end for all of our providers, we're looking at what we're doing on our side to make community care easier, but also holding our vendors. We're going to be renegotiating this contract, which of course is going to be publicly and going forward. But with a lot more, now that we have a lot more knowledge of the problems we're seeing, we're going to hold it to whoever comes in this next contract bidding cycle, that it will look a lot different than it does now.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield my remaining 15 seconds.
Mr. Levin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I wanted to ask you about a few of my favorite old topics from the Economic Opportunities Subcommittee. First is VRE, Veterans Readiness and Employment, a really important program, and I think too often it doesn't get the attention and the resources that it deserves. And we're currently seeing pretty significant understaffing at VRE. I know this is a problem, for example, in the San Diego regional office, where we do have long wait times. And the question I have for you is how can we best help you, and what can you ensure us you're going to do to ensure that these VRE regional offices have the resources they need to provide timely vocational counseling to our disabled veterans?
Thanks. Look, you've hit something. I was down in Southern California. I was up in LA area, but I was also in Arizona, and they're experiencing the same issue here. This was something that's brought to us last week. It's the reason I go to these places, because a lot of times, and just in all fairness, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member as well, what we have found is and this is part of why the reorganization, there's a disconnect between our regional offices and our hospitals and policymakers here in D.C., and I hear it all the time when I go to them, that in fact, one of them pulled me aside, actually in Florida, as a matter of fact, and said, "Sir, I don't think you're getting what we're telling you. I don't think the information is getting to you." And I said, "Well, that's something we got to work on." This was one of those areas, the VRE program. Frankly, it got caught up in the budget issues of last year. And instead of addressing it at central office and making changes that need to be done, which we've now found out didn't need to happen anyway, they began a process of telling everybody, well, you can't bring on new VRE folks because it's the hiring freeze. Well, that ain't true. Because these are exempted positions to start with. They could be hired. But then they guys, well, it goes back, well, we were told not to hire anybody in November, so it goes backwards. So we're structurally, it's been clearly stated from my office to the field now and others, get these people where we can, get them hired under the budget constrictions that we had at the time it was given to us. But we're going to make sure that that is a priority in employment. We had too much of a disconnect with, one counselor having too many caseloads, and that does slow everything else. But it is on our list. It is something we're taking a look at.
Very much
Especially your
appreciate
area. It seemed to be highlighted in your area.
Thank you, Secretary. And you read my mind because that was my next question, is whether those VRNE counselors were subject to that hiring freeze. I wanted to ask the same about HUD-VASH caseworkers. Obviously this is very important for our region, but for really all over the country. And, if you can't hire the staff that you need to combat homelessness or any of the rest, there's going to be a lot of veterans who will unnecessarily suffer. So are the HUD-VASH caseworkers exempt?
They are as well, confirming. They are. I just want to confirm because the HUD-VASH program, but they are, and that's another program that we're looking at. That's actually a homeless program that actually does work very well. And we're looking at that, and I know the president is also committed to that, and you see it reflected in our budget.
Great. And how about the VBA employees who process the claims? Are they?
Yes.
That's good
Yes.
too. I was concerned, there have been public reports, and I hope to clear this up. Press doesn't always get it exactly right. But the reports of delays in hiring healthcare providers who are exempt from the hiring freeze, and the reporting is that OPM is blocking agencies across the federal government from accessing new hire records without approval from senior leadership. And obviously, there's a physician and a nurse shortage, staffing shortage across VA, and want to make sure we don't have any delays when hiring qualified staff who are dedicated to providing care to our veterans. So the question is, what are you doing, and how can we help you to ensure that new hires can start as quickly as possible?
One is we need to streamline our hiring process and get them through, but there's nobody, doctors and stuff, we're hiring them as quickly as possible. There's no being held up from that. If somebody is getting held up, it may be just getting them there and getting the job in, but we're making sure that those are all processed. We have over 300,000 plus exemptions in at OPM. It's not an option. We move through that process. And then I know my chief of staff who is here and others, if there's ever been even a hiccup, we call over and say approve it and get it done.
Well, I appreciate that very much. And you are always welcome to the San Diego region. My hat's off to all of our regional employees, and they do tremendous work for our veterans. I think, this has been a stressful time, obviously, with a lot of the public reporting that's out there, a lot of the perception about what's happening. And I think, your being there physically to reassure folks on the ground that, they're secure and their mission will continue to serve our veterans. I think that would be well received.
Well, we definitely do it. That's one of the reasons I have, unlike when I was in Congress, I used to go home every weekend. Now I've been home 3 times since January. We're on the road. And by the way, I'm happy to have the one day my bride is with me today. We got to see each other, so she decided to come with me to a hearing. I'm not sure what that says great things about me or just that she was bored today. So, but I appreciate that. But yeah, this is something for me. I want to make it very clear for anybody watching this hearing, my full total goal is helping our veterans, and our employees have to do that. And I want our employees to step up, and everywhere I go, I make this out. If you're helping a veteran, even first or second level, from cleaning a room to doing surgery, this should be your golden day. We're going to give you every opportunity to perform at the highest level. Veteran benefits, disability folks, claims folks, we're going to give you every opportunity to get those claims done quicker, faster, so our veteran gets what they need. This should be a time in which I want people to come to work for the VA, because it's going to be a place in which accountability is had, high performance standards are met, and we're going to do so within the budget that you give us, and we're going to continue to do that. But I want them to understand, that's why I do travel all over the country. Let them hear it straight from me. Quit reading what may be's. Quit reading what might be's. Listen to what actually is happening so we can make sure it happens, and I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
All right, my vice chair, Mr. Alford, you're batting cleanup.
Thank you. Am I last, Judge? The last shall be first. All right. I know we're all wanting lunch, right? I know I am. Mr. Secretary.
And I still have one more hearing to go today.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I got a protein bar I'll give you. Hey, I want to get back, and I'm sorry if this has been covered. You having been in Congress, I have 3 hearings today, so I'm kind of like popcorn. I want to get back to the community care program, because that's something, when you said that veterans don't even know about it, I mean, this program was really given a charge back in, I think, 2018 when President Trump saw fit to, and Congress, with a big push by him with the VA Mission and Modern Community Care Act of 2018. And yet, our veterans don't know about this. Do we have a marketing problem with the VA? How do we, what kind of marketing budget do you have? How do you reach people? I mean, you got the older veterans, they don't do text. You have younger veterans who do. Older people want stuff in the mail. How do we get the word out about how the services provided by the VA?
Well, I think it's sort of a twofold question you have there. I'll take the first one is just how do we get in general. I think we've got to break out of our old mold of this is the way we communicate. And I think we've done a good job of that beginning with our social media platforms. Our others here from my office is something, from my background, I was very familiar with. A lot of people, have followed and know. So we're working different angles there for just in general knowing about the VA. But also we're very careful to say if you want VA benefits, you've earned, we want you to get them. But if you don't want to, we're not going to force them upon you either. But we need to make sure that you know about them. But the second part I want to talk about is where you sort of hit on here that's really more concerning to me. And that is a culture that developed over time in the VA and VHA in particular, in that we have to keep people in the system itself and coming to our VA facilities and coming to our CBOCs. And making it very difficult for them to go and get community care, even if they fully deserve it, because they have certain criteria to meet to get into community care, but there's always an outlet at the end, and it's the decision of the doctor and the patient for the best outcome of the veteran, best medical interest kind of issue.
Right.
But what we were finding was, and I actually experienced this at a hospital. I was in a senior leadership meeting, and this discussion became over and over about, we have to sell the VA. And I said, who are you selling it to? And they said, well, we need to make sure that the VA knows that we're the best, that we're the best and they got to come here. I'm saying, that's not your job. Your job is to take care of veterans who show up in the front door. Your job is to make sure they do get the best care they possibly can, and you earn their business simply by doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Amen.
You don't have to sell it. And then the other part of it is, and we have some voices on the outside, and I experienced this in Michigan just this past week. No, I'm sorry, Minnesota. And the question came to me, and this was from a reporter, that said that there were people protesting outside that we should not use community care. This was no joke about this question, Ranking Member. I can't believe this. Said that we ought to keep all the veterans in the VA. The VA has the best quality, and community care is substandard. And I thought to myself, I said, did this person just degenerate every doctor in Minnesota that didn't work for the VA? Basically, we've got to understand our part in the ecosystem. We're blessed to take care of our veterans. We're blessed to take care of the greatest folks in the world who've earned a benefit with us. But we're going to use every partner we can to make sure they get that benefit. And if it's in our facility, they're going to get the best possible care and the best possible resources they can. But if that means that we can help from the community, and especially in rural areas, we can make sure that happens better, that's what we're going to do.
You've talked several times today about misinformation, people getting lied to, gaslit about services are going to be taken away. They're living in fear. I don't know if you did town hall meetings when you were in Congress. I still do them. I like talking to people, even people that I don't agree with. I've got one coming up in 2 weeks, and I'm doing 16 in August. There are a lot of questions and a lot of fear out there. I would love to invite you to come with me on one of my town hall tour stops in Missouri to answer directly to the people of Missouri about the quality of care of the VA and how you're not cutting services. We are trying to improve them.
I think what you're doing is grand, because what I've been doing for 100 days, basically is fighting back against this. The perception, look at the budget that was, even this skinny budget, we're trying to get that, and I'm looking forward to the getting the whole thing. It has an increase in our funding. Okay, it's a 4% increase, 17% if you take TEF, and it's an increase in our funding. Our mandatory spending is still going up. That's the rise in discretionary funds. We know that the president has committed to making sure our veterans are taken care of. But also when you talk about things that frankly are in the process of going on, or discussion on how we make things better, there's always, unfortunately, this desire to say, well, that can't be. Well, let's work this out together, because my first and foremost priority is the veteran, and it's everything we do is going to be focused back to them, and that's what we're going to do as we go forward.
My time is up. I hear the dinner bell ring. The ham and bean soup is calling my name in the House member dining room, and with that, I yield back.
Ms. Wasserman Schultz wanted to make a comment.
Thank you. No, just in closing, thank you, Mr. Secretary, for joining the committee today. We appreciate you and your commitment to veterans and your service as a veteran yourself. Just a few things I want to make sure that I clarify and clear up. You referenced earlier in your remarks, in your answer to a question in a critical way, that the VA grew by 52,000 employees since FY21. I mean, the PACT Act could not possibly have been implemented in the way that Congress intended if we were not ensuring that there were more people to serve the 1 million new veterans that were coming into the system to get either medical care or access to their benefits. So I wanted to just make sure that I made that point. You also referenced community care extensively. I was in Congress, as were you, when we passed the Mission Act. And the Mission Act's purpose was to ensure, particularly at the time, because there was such a backlog, both in terms of veterans getting care, because it was taking too long for many of them to get especially specialized appointments, and because of the distance that some veterans have to travel. That was the purpose. But if you do any veteran survey that I have ever seen, any commentary I've ever seen from veterans, as you know, prefer to get their medical care at the VA. And that is because they are served there by a career-oriented professional that looks through the lens of a veteran. Many of them are veterans, as you know, themselves, and they also know how the culture of veterans and how to treat them. Oftentimes, and I'm not disparaging community care, but when a veteran goes into the community, that's supposed to be a last resort in case they can't get the care in the community. And oftentimes veterans actually don't get the kind of care that they would at the VA because they're dealing with someone who's just kind of churning through their patients, and they don't necessarily see the signs and cues and understand the culture of veterans. Veteran community care hasn't diminished. It's increased.
Yes.
We've gone from 1.1 million to 2.8 million since the start of the program of veterans and community care, and $7 billion to now $40 billion that we have paid out in community care. So there isn't a backlog or a lack of usage of community care. Just wanted to make sure that I put that out there. And lastly, I look forward to continuing to work with you, continuing our monthly calls so that we can make sure that we can not deal with innuendo and
I agree.
just talk to each other through the press, and can focus on our shared commitment to working to take care of our veterans. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Yeah, and I know that wasn't a question, but we and I'll talk more about it offline, because, I mean, adding 1 million people, we've also lost 1 million in that time as well.
It wasn't.
So, yeah, I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for being here. Great job on your first hearing, and I commend you. You got a tough job. Yeah. I bet your hair's white as mine by the time you get through with it.
If I'm halfway as handsome, sir, I'll be really good. How about that?
Oh, don't blow that smoke at me, boy. All right. We're adjourned. Oh, wait a minute, what? Oh, well, if you have questions that you want to submit for the record, we'll do so within the next 7 days. Now we're adjourned.